My dad set the carving knife down and looked at me with this icy stare. You're out of the will. Not a cent for you. I didn't flinch. Just calmly pushed my plate away and said, all right then. But don't expect another dollar from me. The chair scraped across the floor as I stood up and walked out of that room. That was the spark that lit their revenge. Maggie Grayson adjusted her rearview mirror as her Prius slipped onto I-5, the steady hum of the engine blending with the soft drizzle falling over Seattle. She was 38, and she'd built a life she could be proud of, award-winning architect, sleek loft in the heart of downtown, a quiet kind of pride in how far she'd come on her own. But the call she got from her dad 2 days earlier had thrown her off balance. We miss you, Em, he said, his voice strangely gentle, like a version of him she hadn't heard in years. Come down to Portland for dinner Friday. Let's try to make things right. Her finger hovered over the decline button for a long second. It wasn't like they reached out unless their wallets were hurting. For years, Robert and Deborah, her parents, and her siblings, Jason and Tessa, only called when they needed help paying bills. But even so, some part of her wanted to believe maybe things had changed. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally being real. That 3-hour drive to Portland felt longer than usual, her nerves wound tight. Familiar roads passed by, the old craftsman home she'd saved from foreclosure, the diner where she wired money to Tessa for rent once. When she pulled up in front of the family house, its weather-worn paint stood like a quiet reminder of everything she'd done for them. She grabbed the Pinot Noir she'd brought as a peace gesture and stepped into the crisp October breeze. The porch light was on, giving the house a false sense of welcome. She knocked. Deborah answered, smile stiff but polite. Maggie, you made it. From the kitchen, Robert gave a quick wave, still wearing an apron. Jason and Tessa were already at the table, phones in hand, barely looking up. The smell of roast chicken hung in the air. Maggie let herself believe, just for a moment, that this could actually be a fresh start. She set the wine down on the table, the sound of the bottle hitting the wood mixing with quiet conversation. The dining room hadn't changed, it was like stepping back in time. Same old oak table with its chipped edges. Same faded floral curtains she'd offered to replace more than once. Robert sliced the chicken while steam drifted up. Deborah handed around mashed potatoes. Jason cracked a joke about the rain in Portland, and Tessa laughed, her newly manicured nails flashing in the light. Maggie smiled. For a second, it felt like the good kind of normal. The kind she hadn't had in years. She'd almost forgotten what it was like to sit at that table without feeling like everything was about to fall apart. Then Jason leaned back in his chair, that smug look creeping across his face. So, we've got some news, he said casually. Mom and Dad finalized the will. Maggie's fork hovered in the air. Oh, she said, glancing at Robert, who suddenly found his plate very interesting. Deborah avoided her eyes and quietly sipped her water. Jason kept going like it was no big deal. Yeah, the house, the cabin, the savings, all of it's going to me and Tessa. He popped a bite of chicken in his mouth like he'd just mentioned the weather. Tessa gave a tiny smile as she twirled her hair. Maggie felt her stomach twist. And me? She asked, voice lower than she expected. Deborah sighed and set her glass down. Maggie, you've got your career. You're doing really well at your firm. Jason's still figuring things out. And Tessa, well, she has her dreams. They need this more. Robert stayed quiet, focused way too hard on carving that chicken. Maggie repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. Need it more. Her skin burned as she looked around the room. Tessa, who dropped out of art school after Maggie paid $32,000 in tuition. Jason, who went through $52,000 of Maggie's money chasing one failed business idea after another. You can't be serious. She gave a dry laugh, waiting for someone to say it was a joke. But Jason just shrugged like always. You're the hotshot architect, he said with a smirk. What's a cabin to you? Tessa chimed in, yeah, Don't be so over the top. It's not like you're broke. The walls felt like they were closing in. Over the years, Maggie had wired them $2,000 every month, for the mortgage, the bills, Jason's car loan, while they treated her like nothing more than their personal ATM. Finally, Robert looked up. His eyes were tired but had no apology in them. We just thought, you'd be all right. Maggie set her fork down, the metallic clang loud in the thick silence. The chicken was tasteless now, her appetite gone. The warm glow of the chandelier above felt like it was mocking her. She'd made that long drive thinking maybe they wanted to reconnect, but they just lured her here to twist the knife. They hadn't missed her. They wanted her in that chair so they could rub salt in the wound. She looked at their expectant faces, and it hit her, this wasn't family dinner. This was a setup. Her hands gripped the table's edge, knuckles white, as Jason's words echoed in her head like a slap. His smugness. Tessa's smug grin. Her parents' refusal to meet her eyes. It all piled on. She inhaled sharply, steady but cold. So let me get this straight. I've poured over 200 grand into this family, mortgage payments, Tessa's art school, Jason's little business ideas, and I'm the one who doesn't get a dime. Because I've made it. Jason scoffed and leaned back in his chair. Oh boy. Here comes Saint Maggie with her receipts. Just admit it, you're mad because you're not cashing in this time. Tessa rolled her eyes and flicked her nails. Seriously, Maggie, it's not about the money. You act like it's everything. Deborah folded her arms. Her voice was sharp now. Family's not supposed to be a scoreboard, Maggie. We figured you'd get what it means to make sacrifices. Robert didn't say a word, just kept pushing his potatoes around like they might somehow speak for him. Coward, sitting there in silence in his own damn house. Maggie let out a sharp laugh, bitter as hell, slicing right through the heavy air. Sacrifice, she said. You want to talk about sacrifice? She looked straight at them. I paid the mortgage when you were 2 months from losing this place. She turned toward Tessa. I paid for your college tuition when you came crying, saying your future was on life support. Then you quit 2 semesters in. Then she hit Jason. 50 grand into your craft beer pipe dream. You never even bothered to show up for it. Maggie's voice started to climb, words punching the room with each breath. I skipped holidays, missed vacations, worked double shifts, emptied out my savings, for all of you. And now I'm the obsessed one. Jason leaned back in his chair, a smug little smirk on his face. Don't act like we forced you. No one put a gun to your head. You wanted to be the savior. Tessa chimed in, shrugging like none of it mattered. Yeah. Don't act like it's our fault you're angry now. Deborah's face went cold. We did what was best for everyone. You're fine, Maggie. Robert finally spoke, barely above a whisper. It's not personal. Maggie shot up, her chair scraping back with a screech. Her pulse was pounding. Not personal. I've been your damn life raft for over a decade. I gave up buying my own home, skipped out on trips I dreamed about, drained my savings just to keep your heads above water. She scanned their faces. And now you have the nerve to smile at me and say I don't need it. I was never family to you. Just a walking paycheck. Her eyes locked on each of them. Jason, smug and smugger. Tessa, soaking in entitlement like it was perfume. Deborah, a statue of ice. Robert, shrinking into himself. Not a single trace of guilt in the room. Just smug satisfaction. She took a step back, feeling the weight of their indifference press on her chest like a boulder. You know what? You're absolutely right. I don't need this. Her voice dropped into something cold and final. But you don't need anything from me either. Not anymore. She grabbed her coat from the back of the chair. No one touched the pine nuts. The room was silent except for the whisper of her leaving. That wasn't a dinner. That wasn't a family. That was a pit full of leeches, and she was done letting them feed. Part 4, The Break. Maggie didn't walk out. She stormed. The screen door slammed behind her, a sharp crack echoing into the quiet Portland night. Her breath clouded in the chilly air as she power-walked to her Prius, keys rattling in her trembling fist. Then Deborah's voice rang out, cutting through the dark like a blade. "If you leave now, don't think we'll let you come back." Maggie didn't flinch. Didn't turn around. She climbed into the driver's seat, the leather stiff and icy against her legs. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. 3 hours on the road back to Seattle. She didn't mind. Distance felt like armor. The headlights carved through the darkness. Her thoughts spun, Jason's cocky grin, Tessa's careless attitude, Deborah's cold logic. Over and over, like a broken track in her head. She used to believe blood meant loyalty. But all they ever did was cash her checks. When she finally pulled into the garage of her Seattle loft, she was running on fumes, anger and fatigue tangled up like wires. She tossed her keys onto the counter. The metal clatter rang out in the stillness. She poured herself a double shot of whiskey, letting the burn anchor her as she slumped onto the couch, eyes fixed on the city lights glowing through the window. 12 years. Over $200,000. And not one thank you that meant anything. Then her phone buzzed. Bank alert. An automatic transfer was scheduled, $2,000 headed straight to her parents. $1,400 for their mortgage, $800 for who knows what else. Just like every month. On autopilot. She opened the app, thumb hovering over, cancel recurring payment. And just for a moment, she froze. Years of guilt flashed through her mind. Deborah's weepy phone calls. Robert's silent nods of shame. Jason and Tessa's constant emergencies. Then, tap. Cancelled. The screen flashed, successfully terminated, and something snapped. It was like a weight just fell off her shoulders. She looked down at the whiskey glass, suddenly heavy in her grip. The silence around her wasn't empty, it was peaceful. She thought she'd cry. Maybe regret it. But what came instead was this odd calm. Clear. Final. She wasn't their daughter anymore. Not really. She'd been their bank account, and the ATM just shut down. Another buzz. Deborah. Maggie. How could you do this? We need to talk. Then Jason. You're a real piece of work, cutting us off. Tessa followed. Selfish much? Maggie muted them all. One by one. Each ping was just another echo of their entitlement fading into the void. She got up and walked to the window. Puget Sound shimmered below, vast and untouched, like it didn't care what anyone expected of it. She'd handed them everything, her time, her energy, her money. Little pieces of herself they chewed up and spit out. That dinner wasn't an olive branch. It was a celebration that she was still playing the fool. She caught her reflection in the glass, tired, sure, but grounded. Determined. I'm done, she whispered. Not a thought. A promise. She tipped the last of the whiskey back. It burned on the way down. Steadying. No more midnight emergencies. No more being their safety net. It was time to furnish her place. Book that Iceland trip. Grow her own savings account for once. Because this time, she was finally choosing herself. Everything had always been pushed aside, for them. But now. That money was finally hers. Maggie gently set her glass down, a faint smile playing on her lips. The emptiness where her family used to be still hurt, but it wasn't grief. It was more like a blank canvas, raw and wide open, just waiting for her to fill it on her own terms. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe. She woke up that morning in her Seattle loft, gray light seeping through the blinds, the peace from the night before still wrapping around her. She made a cup of coffee and let herself enjoy the silence. But that calm shattered the second her phone buzzed. The notifications kept piling in. Deborah, you're breaking my heart. Maggie, call me. Jason, you think you can just ditch us? Watch yourself. Tessa, wow. They were furious. All over a will. Abandoning family. That's what they called it. Pathetic, she thought. She hit delete. Every message. She wasn't going to let their poison sink in. She'd cut them off financially, and she meant it. They'd have to deal with their own mess now. But by midday, things escalated. Her voicemail was packed. Deborah sobbing about bills. Robert grumbling about being disrespected. Jason tossing around veiled threats like candy. Maggie silenced her phone. But something in her gut told her this wasn't over. Later that evening, a text from a coworker popped up. You seen this? Attached was a TikTok link. Her stomach twisted as she tapped it. Tessa's voice came through, high and fake sweet, over a shaky video. Meet my sister, the rich snob who abandoned us. Just 'cause we didn't worship her. The footage cut to bits of an old Zoom call, Maggie, mid-rant, venting about all their never-ending demands. But they'd chopped it up, made her look nasty and selfish. A text overlay screamed, she cut USOFF. The video had blown up, 52,000 views and counting. Comments kept flooding in. What a jerk. Families forever, loser. Bet she's living large while they're starving. Maggie's face burned. The shame hit her like a slap. Clients even started reaching out, asking if she was okay. Her reputation, something she'd built brick by brick, was starting to crack. She could see Tessa's petty fingerprints all over it. But still, the public dragging stung worse than she expected. She paced around her place, her emotions a mess, anger, shame, disbelief. They couldn't just leave her alone. No, they had to try and tear her down. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed screenshots of the video, debating whether to respond. Before she could decide, another alert popped up, from her apartment security app. She tapped in and rewound the footage from earlier that day. And there it was, 2:17 p.m. Someone in a black hoodie limped across the screen, heading straight for her parking spot. That walk was unmistakable, Jason. He crouched down by her Prius and, without hesitation, slashed all 4 tires with a pocketknife. He even looked up and smirked at the camera before walking away like nothing happened. Maggie's breath caught. A surge of rage boiled in her chest. She ran down to the garage. Sure enough, tires slashed to bits, rubber everywhere. A repair. Easily $820, maybe more. She saved the footage, her hands still shaking, but her mind already shifting gears. This wasn't just guilt-tripping anymore. This was destruction. The next morning, her lawyer, Elena, called. Got your email about the video and tires, she said, voice serious. Bad news, Jason filed a small claim suit yesterday. Says you owe him $52,000. Emotional distress and abandoned support. Maggie's jaw tightened. He slashed my tires, Elena. I've got it on video. There was a pause. Send it to me, Elena said. We'll hit back with defamation, property damage, the works. But we've got to move fast. You've got the advantage right now. After hanging up, Maggie stared at the screenshots from the footage. Jason's smug little grin burned into her memory. Emotional distress. She'd funded their lives, $300,000 over 12 years. And now they had the nerve to sue. She leaned against the counter, her coffee forgotten and cold. The TikTok. That hit her pride. The slashed tires and lawsuit. That was a direct hit to her wallet. They thought they could wear her down with noise and drama. But she wasn't that same woman who once drove to Portland with hope in her heart. That version of her was long gone. She forwarded the security footage to Elena and opened her banking app. The $2,000 she usually sent them every month. Still sitting right there. They'd lost control. And she was about to make sure they felt it. This wasn't some petty squabble anymore. This was war. And she had no plans to back down. Maggie stood in her kitchen, staring out at the Seattle skyline blurred by rain that matched her mood perfectly. In the garage below sat her Prius, all 4 tires replaced, a $920 bill already paid. And hanging over her head like a storm cloud was Jason's lawsuit. Her lawyer had the footage. The countersuit was in motion. But the sheer nerve of it all, over $50,000 for emotional distress. After everything she'd done for them. Her phone had finally gone quiet. Not a peep from her family now. But that silence. She didn't trust it. It felt too calm. Sure enough, 2 days later, the next punch landed. A knock at the door. A process server handed her a thick manila envelope. Jason had officially upped the ante. Now they'd filed a civil case in Superior Court, accusing her of breaking a verbal agreement to support the family indefinitely. He wanted $77,000, claiming her decision to cut them off had wrecked their finances. Included were sworn statements from Deborah and Tessa, accusing Maggie of abandoning them and leaving them penniless. Maggie's hands trembled as she read through it. Penniless? She'd been covering their mortgage until just last month. This wasn't petty drama. This was a deliberate scheme to drain her dry. An hour later, Elena called, her voice tight with frustration. They don't have real proof, she said, but they're betting you'll settle just to avoid the mess. Unless we go on the offensive, court set for next month. Maggie couldn't sit still, her anger bubbling. Go on the offensive, then. I've got the receipts, bank statements showing $300,000 sent over the past 12 years. They can't just rewrite the past, she said. Elena agreed but added a warning. It'll cost you. Legal fees could hit $10,000. Maggie felt the weight of it. Still, she'd fight, even if it emptied her accounts. That night, things escalated. She jolted awake at 3 a.m. to a loud crash outside her loft, heart racing. She pulled up her security feed. A shattered brick on her balcony, broken glass from the sliding door catching the moonlight. This time, the footage was clear, Tessa, hoodie up, winding back her arm before throwing the brick and running off. Maggie's breath caught in her throat, adrenaline surging. She called the police, who showed up within 20 minutes. One of the officers looked exhausted as he scribbled notes. Do you recognize her? He asked, eyes on the footage. Yeah, Maggie said flatly. My sister. He raised an eyebrow but made a note and promised to investigate. The repair bill came in at $1,400, another punch to her savings. By morning, she was running on fumes, torn between rage and fatigue. She sent the video to Elena, who immediately added it to their counterclaim: vandalism, harassment, defamation. This strengthens our case, Elena said. But they're clearly spiraling. Stay alert. Maggie nodded, her eyes fixed on the plywood covering her balcony door. Spiraling didn't begin to describe it. They'd gone from guilt-tripping her to wrecking her tires, trashing her name, and now smashing her home. Her mind flashed with images: Tessa's smug expression, Jason's fake limp, her parents' crocodile tears in court. They thought she'd crack, cave in, pay them just to make it all go away. Instead, she opened her laptop and pulled up the TikTok video, now at 82,000 views, and all the bile it had stirred up. Then she checked her bank account, $2,000 saved from the cancelled family payment, barely a cushion against what was coming. She wasn't wealthy, just financially stable. Every cent she kept from them now felt like survival. Her jaw clenched. They'd underestimated her. She'd spent over a decade sacrificing for them. But the woman standing now, the one they'd pushed too far, wasn't backing down. She wasn't fighting out of spite. She was fighting for peace. Yeah, the legal bills hurt, and the shattered glass still haunted her, but she stood her ground. They lit this fire. She'd be the one to end it. Sitting at her kitchen counter, the boarded-up balcony door glaring behind her, Maggie stared at her glowing laptop screen. Elena's latest email popped up. Counterclaims submitted, defamation, vandalism, harassment. Court in 3 weeks. We've got the edge now, Elena wrote. The $300,000 in documented transfers over the years sat neatly printed beside her, a wall of proof against Jason's lies. The videos of Tessa and Jason's attacks were uploaded, undeniable. Her savings had taken a hit, 12 grand already gone to lawyers and repairs, but she wasn't backing down. They thought they'd cornered her. Now she was coming out swinging. She opened Instagram, her fingers pausing above the keyboard. That TikTok video was still making rounds, painting her as cold and heartless. She'd had enough of staying silent. She began typing. For 12 years, I supported my family, $300,000 for their home, bills, my siblings' futures. When I stopped, they cut me out of the will and smeared my name. Tessa's viral video. Total fabrication. Jason's lawsuit. Fiction. They vandalized my car. They smashed my home. She uploaded the receipts, bank records, photos of slashed tires, video stills of the brick, blurring just enough to protect privacy. Then she hit post, her heart pounding. This wasn't about pity. It was about clearing the fog of lies. Within hours, the post blew up, over 10,000 likes and hundreds of shares. The comments poured in. You're a saint for putting up with that. Leeches, the whole lot of them. Proud of you. Stay strong. The tide was finally turning. Tessa's TikTok started bleeding followers, buried under waves of backlash. Maggie let out a slow breath, something in her chest loosening. Her voice was hers again, and they couldn't drown it out. The next day, Elena called. Court's moving faster than expected. Your evidence is rock solid. Jason's legal team is scrambling. Even the affidavits from her parents were unraveling under review. Maggie let out a dry laugh. Good, she said. Let them squirm. A week later, the police followed up. Tessa was facing a misdemeanor for the brick throwing, Jason for slashing her tires. The legal trap was closing in on them. I could practically see them holed up in that house back in Portland, thinking they were 10 steps ahead, totally unaware of how deep they'd already sunk. But I beat them to court. Elena tore Jason's lawsuit apart in less than an hour. My bank records made it crystal clear I'd supported them. The security footage nailed who threw the brick, and that Instagram post. It screamed defamation. The judge didn't hesitate. Bang, gavel down. Jason was slapped with a $16,000 penalty for damages. Tessa owed another $6,000 for wrecking my balcony. Their case? Tossed out with prejudice. I stepped out of the courthouse into the rain, coat damp, but inside, I burned with quiet victory. They tried to bury me. I buried them first. Back at my loft, I poured a glass of wine and sat in the stillness, the only sound being the soft tapping of rain on the windows. Then my phone buzzed. A Venmo notification. 20 grand from Robert and Deborah. It was marked settlement. No message. No apology. I stared at it for a beat, then funneled it straight to a nonprofit that helps overworked caregivers. Their hush money didn't mean a damn thing to me. I didn't want peace with them. I wanted them out of my life for good. The TikTok smear campaign vanished into the internet void. My client stopped asking awkward questions. My work, my life, it all settled into something calm. They'd lost their grip on me. I'd found my footing again. And for once, all that fighting felt like it had actually meant something. ###### Part 8. Resolution. Justice. Freedom. I leaned against the new balcony railing, the one Tessa shattered, with the Seattle skyline glittering beneath me as the sun dipped low. That courtroom wind still buzzed through my veins. The fines, the failed lawsuit, the hush money redirected to a cause that mattered. All of it finally behind me. I blocked their numbers after I saw the Venmo hit. Just cut the cord. At first, the silence echoed, like a sudden drop after years of constant noise. But soon, it wasn't silence. It was peace. I hadn't just won in court. I'd won my life back. Without that $2,000 monthly bleed, my bank account finally had room to breathe again. I signed up for a kayaking class on Lake Union. First time out there, slicing through the water, I felt something in me settle. That anxious tension, gone. I even bought paints and a canvas and let myself go wild with color at night, something I'd never let myself do before. At work, Jasmine, this soft-spoken coworker, noticed. Over coffee one morning, she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." Our talks turned into trail hikes. Hikes turned into dinners. She was warm in a way that didn't demand anything from me. Just, there. And one night, when her fingers brushed mine, I didn't flinch. I didn't back away. I hadn't been looking for love, but it showed up anyway, with no strings. Word got back to me eventually. Deborah was bussing tables at some greasy diner now. Her spa days just a memory. Robert was stacking lumber at a warehouse. No more hush money cushioning his silence. Jason was unemployed, desperately trying to sell off startup ideas online, but nobody was buying. Tessa's Instagram turned from polished influencer shots to low-effort selfies. Her following tanked. They were struggling. And I didn't feel bad. They built their own collapse. I just stepped away. I stood on my balcony, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The legal fees, yeah, $12,500 stung, but that was the price of peace, and I'd pay it again in a heartbeat. I used to drive all the way to Portland, chasing a version of family that only existed in my head. Letting go. It didn't break me. It freed me. Now I had kayaking, late-night painting sessions, Jasmine's quiet laugh, a life that felt like mine for the first time. Being cut out of the will used to feel like a knife. Now. It was the scalpel that separated me from their poison. I sipped my tea, the city lights blinking like constellations. They came for me with lies and bricks and guilt, but I came out stronger. And for the first time in forever, I smiled. A real one. Justice wasn't just the court ruling. It was this, living my own life, on my own terms. A year later, I found myself standing on a cliff overlooking Puget Sound. Autumn sun spilling gold on the waves. Jasmine and I had kayaked here, laughing, a thermos of coffee shared on the rocks. That moment stayed with me. Warmer than the coffee. I used to think family was this unshakable thing, like some kind of fixed star. But mine had been a black hole. Always pulling, never giving. Losing them didn't wreck me. It gave me a clean slate. I looked back, remembered the shock of being cut out, the fury, the endless dollars I'd poured into people who saw me as a wallet, not a daughter. The viral video. The slashed tires. The broken glass. They weren't just after my money, they wanted to break who I was. But every blow made me tougher. I stood my ground, in courtrooms, in police reports, online, and I came out on top. That $22,000 from my parents? That wasn't the win. Giving it away was. I didn't need crumbs from people who never valued me. I'd laid my own bricks. Built something that didn't carry anyone else's name. Jasmine nudged me out of my thoughts. You're quiet today. I turned to her, smiling. Just thinking. A year ago, I was their doormat. I motioned toward the horizon. Now. Jasmine slipped her hand into mine. Now you're you. And that was it. That was all I ever wanted. No more desperate phone calls, no more guilt laced into every conversation. Last month, we went to Iceland. I stood under the northern lights, breath stolen by the kind of beauty I used to think wasn't meant for me. My loft's now a mess of half-finished paintings, each one proof I'm still healing. I heard Deborah's still waitressing. Robert's back aches from lifting lumber. Jason and Tessa are floundering. Karma's got a slow hand, but it's steady. And I don't gloat. I don't need to. They picked greed. I picked peace. The betrayal still hurts, sure. It felt like a blade straight through. But that pain. It was the cut that freed me. Standing there, wind tugging at my coat, I saw it clear as the sky. Strength wasn't in how long I carried them, it was in the moment I set them down. Blood didn't define family. Jasmine's steady hand, the friends who show up just to show up, that was my real family. I took a deep breath. The ocean air was cold and sharp in the best way. I used to think love meant giving everything up. But real love? Real love lifts. It doesn't chain. The will was their final play. And it cost them everything. I turned to Jasmine, waves crashing below us. Let's go home, I said, voice firm but soft. And that's where I stood, whole. Forged in the fire of their betrayal. But mine. Fully mine.